Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be moving on to our next unit. This unit is 11-1, functions. We're going to be talking about what functions are. You've already seen what they look like in equation form, but also we're going to be talking about just points, lines, parabolas, various different objects that we're going to see on the coordinate plane. Okay, but first we really need to discuss what sets are. Okay, so these sets are just a collection of objects such as numbers or points. And here are just two collections, two sets. You can see that as the brackets are encasing these numbers. These are just a set of numbers. These are a set of points. And actually a set of points is what we call a relation. Okay? A relation is just a set of points. So this one right here is going to be a relation. The question is, why is it a relation? Why do we call it a relation? Okay, because each of these x values coordinate with or relate to a y value. So each of these x's correspond to exactly one y value. And actually that's the definition of what a function is. A function is just a relationship in which each input value is related to only one output. Okay, so one input for every output. Okay, and to illustrate this, I'd like to just look at a simple input and an output. So if I start placing numbers in here of 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay, and then say my outputs are just 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and say that each input coordinates to 2 coordinates to 8, 3 to 9, 4 to 10, and 5 to 11. This is called a one-to-one correspondence because every input only has one singular output, and that's what we want. If this occurs, then we are going to have a function. If I had inputs of 2, 3, 4, and 5 again, okay, and say that 2 corresponded with 3. Okay, this is 2 comma 3. And say that 3 corresponded with 5. All right. Now let's say that 4 corresponds to both 2 and 8. Okay, both 2 and 8. And then we have this last number of just say 10. Okay, this would be considered a non-function because of this relationship right here. The definition of a function is, again, you can only have one input for every output. So this one input here of 4 has two outputs of 2 and 8. So this is therefore not a function. So if we take a look at our first example, here are 3 points, 2, 4, 3, 5, and 2, 6. These are just 3 points that we can find in a coordinate plane. This first point, we have an input of 2 and an output of 4. Okay, so 2 maps to 4. Okay, another way for corresponding is just mapping. Okay, then we have 3 and 5. So 3 is a different x value. It maps to 5. Okay, and lastly we have 2 again, but this one maps to 6. Okay, as you can see right here, we have one input to 2 outputs, so therefore this is not a function. Okay, why not? There's a conflict when we input 2 for x. Say that our function had an input of 2, we would therefore get 2 outputs of 2, 4 and 2, 6, which cannot be the case, therefore it's not a function. So for determining if a relationship is a function, there's going to be actually 2 things that we're looking for, or looking at. One is that we're looking at a set of points, just like we did up here. Okay, also we're going to be looking at a graph. First I want to talk about and practice this using sets of points. The same x value can't, underline that can't, be related to 2 different y values. Just like up here, 2 corresponded to 4, but it also corresponded to 6. Therefore, it's not a function. So here's our first set of data. We have 0, 3, 1, 5, 2, 3, 3, 1, 4, -1. Really what I'm considering first, this is the first thing you look for, are x's. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do any of those repeat? No. Since we do not have repeating x values, we will not have a non-function. So in this case, this will be a function. The second problem, if we look here, number 2, 4, 8. We're looking at 4, 6, and 8. These are our x values that we're looking at. Function or not a function? Function. Very good. Because we're looking at the x values of 4, 6, and 8, they do not overlap. There is no relationship between the three. So we're looking at just singular points with only one output. Lastly, let's look at -1, -4, 2, 8, and -1, 4. Function or not a function? That's correct. It is not a function. Not a function because we have repeating x values with different outputs. -1 corresponds to both 4 and -4. Maps to both of them, so therefore it's not a function. The second part of this is using a graph. If we're looking at the graph of a function, we cannot have two different points, can't have the same x value. They can't be on the same vertical line. This is also called the vertical line test, and you'll see this in a minute. If any vertical line intersects the graph more than one point, then it is not a function. Okay, not a function. The line intersects the graph at more than one point. That cannot happen. So if we take a look at our first problem here, we're going to be talking about parabolas in this case. If we start drawing vertical lines the whole way across the page, or if you want to take your pencil and drag it across left to right, it should only cross the line or intersect the line once at every single point. This one, therefore, is a function. If we look at this one, number 2, we're looking at our vertical line. So if I start drawing across, we have a problem. Right here and here. They're on the same vertical line, but if you look up here, if any vertical line intersects the graph at more than one point, we do not have a function. So if we just practice this right now, if we're looking at number 3, we start drawing our vertical lines. Function or not a function? Good, function. Okay, function because it only intersects each line once. Lastly, this is number 4. If I start drawing my vertical lines in here, okay, function or not a function? Not a function. Very good, because of these points right here. Okay, in fact, the center line right here crosses 3 times, so therefore it's definitely not a function. Again, let's take a look. Are these functions? And what you have to ask yourself, do each of these inputs at our x values coordinate with only one or map to only one y value or output? If you look at this first dot, are there any lines overlapping? Is there any other point overlapping this point? No. So this point's okay. I'm going to put a check mark there. This point, do we have any other point on this y vertical line that overlaps? Yes. In fact, if we do our vertical line test here, we'll see that it crosses more than one point. So right there is a dead giveaway. If we go over here to the right, we also see that they cross twice. So therefore, this is not a function. Okay, also with this line, if I start drawing my vertical lines at each of my points, function or not a function? Function, very good, because each of these lines only intersect each point once. Excellent. Now lastly, these are some other graphs that you may see. These are called piecewise functions because each of these functions are just on a different entire equation altogether, but they do not extend across the entire plane. So if we're looking here at this first function, as it starts making its way upward, we see that there's an open hole. An open hole means that it's not there. It does not represent the point at -3. So if we do our vertical line test, it passes right through the hole and only intersects the line once at this point down here. Same thing with this line. If I do my vertical line test, it only intersects at this point down here. And lastly, same thing. This point is the only point that it crosses. Therefore, this is a function. Number 8, is it a function or not a function? You start doing your vertical line test. Okay, the 2 spots in which I'm really concerned about are where the lines start overlapping. This point, and these 2 points. Do they overlap? Do they intersect on the same line? Yes, so therefore it is not a function. So as a recap, let's think about what our functions are. A function can only have one input that maps to one output. So this is called a one-to-one correspondence. Okay, next, so this is our first point, one input to one output. Our second idea that we sort of covered was if we're looking at points, we really want to consider the x value first. X values cannot repeat. Okay, and lastly, the vertical line test. Remember that vertical line must only cross each point on the plane once. Okay, so if you drag your pencil across the page, you can see if it intersects that line more than once. Thank you for watching. This has been Mr. Korb with 11-1 functions.